guys, thank you for joining me here today. I've been looking forward to creating a Star Wars Versus video for some time now, and I finally got around to creating my first one here. I hope you enjoy it. One hypothetical encounter which has intrigued me for a while now is that of Darth Maul versus Darth Tyranus, or Count Dooku. This is because their preferred fighting styles are very different, and also because both of them were once chosen by Sidious. When you ask Star Wars fans what they believe would be the outcome of such a duel, opinions seem to be relatively split, and compelling arguments can be made for either of the two to be the predicted victors. For reference, I've decided to compare them as the characters they were during the Clone Wars series. As such, I will refrain from using examples of Maul's accomplishments which take place in post-Clone Wars times, such as during Star Wars Rebels. I'm also only going to be pulling information from the current canon, so no feats performed strictly within the context of Legends continuity will be considered here. Now, let's give a short summation of the characters' histories.
I've become more powerful than any Jedi. Even you.
Born in 102 BBY on the planet of Sereno, Count Dooku was a tall, highly force-sensitive human male who was recruited into the Jedi Order at a young age. Despite concluding his life as a Sith Lord, he actually spent most of his life serving as a distinguished member of the Jedi Order, having been a brilliant trainee who stood head and shoulders above his peers from the time he was a young Padawan. In fact, he impressed his superiors so much that Grandmaster Yoda himself elected to take Dooku as an apprentice, breaking a long-standing tradition of Grandmasters not taking on apprentices. However, from a young age, Dooku harbored a secret fascination with the dark side and Sith lore, and as much as he attempted to keep this fascination a secret, it revealed itself in bits and pieces over the course of his many years with the Jedi Order. For example, while on a dangerous mission with his apprentice Qui-Gon Jinn in the canon book Master and Apprentice, the infamous bounty hunter Shenda Mol had found and was preparing to kill a younger Qui-Gon, but Dooku, full of rage, used Force lightning to brutally kill the female bounty hunter while screaming, "You know nothing of power." Dooku eventually grew disillusioned with the Jedi Order altogether, departing and returning to his home planet of Sereno, where he overthrew his brother Ramel and took power himself, inheriting a massive trove of inherited family wealth, thereby making him one of the wealthiest beings in the entire galaxy. Eventually, he would be contacted by the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, who would manipulate Dooku into joining him as another Sith Lord by capitalizing on his frustration with the rampant corruption of the Republic. Dooku would become the face of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, known colloquially as the Separatist Movement or the Separatists. This movement was comprised of many planetary systems which had also grown disillusioned with the Republic. Dooku would serve as the leader of the Separatist movement during the Clone Wars, while Sidious, serving as the Chancellor of the Republic, would play both sides of the war to orchestrate events in his favor. Dooku would encounter and kill many Jedi throughout the Clone Wars, finally meeting his end on the Invisible Hand at the hands of Anakin Skywalker, right before the war ended.
I will make sure you stay awake long enough to feel every single cut.
Maul, once known as Darth Maul, was a red Zabrak male born in 54 BBY on the mysterious matriarchal planet of Dathomir. Like Dooku, he was also born with a very high level of force sensitivity. This was noticed by Sidious, who had originally intended to take Mother Talzin as his apprentice, but ultimately opted to take a young Maul instead. His upbringing under Sidious was nothing short of brutal. Sidious was a ruthless, sadistic master, punishing failure severely, and over the course of Maul's childhood and adolescence, this forged him into an extremely skilled, bloodthirsty warrior, perpetually fueled by rage. Unfortunately for him, he would find himself cut in half at the waist by a young Obi-Wan Kenobi during the Battle of Naboo. Barely clinging to life, remaining animate solely by virtue of his anger, he ended up on the junk planet of Lotho Minor, where he spent approximately the next decade in a perpetual psychosis driven by his unbearable pain and rage. He would eventually be found on Lotho Minor by his brother, Savage Opress, who would bring him back to Mother Talzin on Dathomir. She used her exceptional abilities and dark magics to forge him a new set of functional prosthetic legs and also healed his splintered mind. Towards the end of the Clone Wars, he would kill Pre Vizsla and, by Mandalorian customs, become the rightful leader of the planet Mandalore, a world renowned for its unique warrior culture. He would eventually be defeated and captured by Ahsoka Tano. He managed to escape from public custody during Order 66, and at some point in the years after the rise of the Empire, became the leader of the organized crime syndicate known as the Crimson Dawn. Presumably, this too would eventually fall apart, and for the remainder of his life, his singular obsession, his one and only driving purpose, would be to find and kill Obi-Wan Kenobi in order to avenge himself and all he lost due to his first defeat against Obi-Wan. His end would come in Star Wars Rebels at the hands of Kenobi himself on the desert planet of Tatooine, and he would die a poetic death, finally letting go of hatred in the seconds before he became one with the Force. Both of these two are immensely powerful, skillful fighters, and both were, at different points, apprenticed under Darth Sidious. However, there are some significant differences between the fighting style of these two characters, and I look forward to elucidating upon these differences as they will make for a very interesting analysis. I'm going to be breaking down my analysis into 4 different sections. I will be comparing them as lightsaber duelists, force wielders, and martial artists, and then I will give a summary as to how I believe the encounter would pan out, taking factors from all 3 categories into consideration.
It is obvious that this contest cannot be decided by our knowledge of the Force, but by our skills with a lightsaber.
From a young age, Count Dooku was a prodigy with the lightsaber. He decided to specialize in Form 2, known as Makashi, focusing on blade-to-blade combat and utilizing primarily one-handed, fencing-oriented movements. This form is archaic, yet nuanced and very deadly in practice hands. Dooku forged himself a unique curved lightsaber hilt, which complemented his fencing-focused lightsaber dueling style very well, as it enhanced his accuracy and his ability to perform certain cuts and thrusts due to the unique way in which the curved hilt sat in his hand. Dooku's exceptional mastery of Makashi is one of the reasons Sidious recruited him, as he knew his apprentice would face many Jedi in blade-to-blade combat during the Clone Wars. Dooku did, in fact, display many impressive feats with the lightsaber over the course of the war. Let's start right at the beginning of the Clone Wars. Right after the events which transpired at the Battle of Geonosis, Anakin and Obi-Wan tracked down Dooku and engaged him one at a time. Although the two of them were already quickly beginning to distinguish themselves as skilled duelists by that time, Dooku made very short work of them, cutting Obi-Wan badly, and severing Anakin's right arm right above his elbow. These two were utter child's play for him. Neither of them had managed to land a single shot on the Count, and had he not been under specific orders from Sidious, both of them surely would have died at his hands that day. Now, while Form 2 is extremely effective in blade-to-blade combat, it does carry its own inherent weaknesses. For example, it tends to be weak against combatants who are very strong and are effectively able to leverage their strength in a duel. However, I'm convinced that with Dooku's exceptional abilities with force augmentation, this allowed him to offset this weakness to a significant degree. To support this argument, I'm going to refer to another encounter Dooku had with Anakin Skywalker. This encounter occurred in Season 4, Episode 18 of the Clone Wars series, entitled Crisis on Naboo. In this scene, Anakin, attempting to rescue the Chancellor, faces off with Dooku in a lightsaber duel. Dooku is said to regard Anakin as the foremost practitioner of Form 5 lightsaber combat, also known as Gem So, a strength-based fighting style. Having an unmatched force potential as the Chosen One, when Anakin fully augments himself with the Force, he's able to perform offensive lightsaber attacks with an almost absurd amount of strength, able to simply bash his way through the defenses of most opponents. However, during this duel, Dooku shows that he's able to defend himself against these strikes with one-arm maneuvers and blade locks. These are some of the strongest overhand chops in the entire galaxy, and nearly any other opponent would have had their lightsaber knocked clean out of their grip or would have had their blade knocked back into them, thus ending up wounded or killed by their own weapon. Did you notice how even when Dooku was in a disadvantaged lying position while having to block Anakin's brutal overhand chops, he managed to do so while wielding his saber with just one arm? In addition, Dooku showed that he had the ability to move quickly enough to face off against multiple opponents simultaneously and come out on top either in victory or as a stalemate. One of my favorite examples of this is from Season 3, Episode 4 of The Clone Wars. Dooku was ambushed by Asajj Ventress and 3 fellow Night Sister witches, whom Mother Talzin had vouched for as being the best warriors in the Night Sister clan. The 4 Night Sisters not only made themselves invisible using Night Sister magic, but also drugged Dooku. As such, not only did Dooku have to face off against 4 lightsaber-wielding opponents, but he had to face these 4 opponents while they were invisible and while he was under the influence of a powerful drug which sedated him and dulled his reflexes. Despite these setbacks, Dooku still managed to deflect every single lightsaber attack they threw at him, eventually defeating them using his Force abilities. Though this is my favorite example of the Count holding his own against multiple opponents, it is certainly not the only one. He also performed very well against Anakin and Obi-Wan on multiple occasions, such as on Obadiah, home of the Pike Syndicate. During this encounter, neither Anakin nor Obi-Wan managed to land a single blow on the Count, despite being more advanced in their abilities by then in comparison with where they were in the Attack of the Clones movie. As I mentioned earlier, Dooku is a bona fide prodigy with the lightsaber. He killed many Jedi Knights throughout the course of the Clone Wars, and his only clear superior during this period was Grand Master Yoda himself. Whereas Dooku's specialties in lightsaber combat were focused primarily on finesse, accuracy, and dexterity, Maul's abilities relied more on strength and speed, both of which he possessed in spades. From an early age, Sidious wanted to train Maul in the unorthodox so as to enable him to overwhelm future opponents quickly, and thus, Maul was trained from a young age to master the saber staff, a rare variation of the lightsaber with 2 blades rather than a conventional one-bladed hilt. However, Maul also proved during the Clone Wars that he was competent with one-blade hilts. For my analysis, I'm going to use feats Maul has showcased with both single and double-bladed hilts to make my points. With both single and double-bladed hilts, Maul was a practitioner of Form 7 Juyo. Juyo was similar to Form 6 Naiman in that the point was for a practitioner to incorporate moves from different lightsaber forms in order to craft their own personalized hybrid form. However, with Juyo, a practitioner would also use their passions to enhance their performance. As such, Juyo was primarily wielded by dark side wielders, with the Jedi Order forbidding its members from studying the form. Given the aggressiveness of Maul's attacks, his acrobatics, and his integration of striking into his sequences, I'm inclined to believe that while crafting his customized sequences, he pulled inspiration for a number of his moves from Form 4, Ataru, perhaps with bits of Form 1, Shicho, and Form 5 variant Jem So, as these were aggressive, strong, proactive forms. The earliest display of Maul's formidable abilities with the lightsaber is in his duel against Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn on Naboo. This occurred during the events of the Phantom Menace movie. At this time, Obi-Wan was still a young Padawan, but Qui-Gon Jinn was a powerful, highly respected Jedi duelist. Though not on the level of, say, Mace Windu or his former master Count Dooku, he was skilled enough to carve a distinguished reputation for himself as a duelist. However, during him and Obi-Wan's encounter with the young Darth Maul, both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan simultaneously struggled to land any good blows on Maul. Despite Juyo focusing on offense, Maul's defensive capabilities enable him to deflect attacks from both Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn with little difficulty, and they were obviously hard-pressed to defend themselves against the speed and ferocity of Maul's offensives, with Qui-Gon eventually finding himself with Maul's lightsaber piercing him through his midsection. Though his relative youth played a role in his victory, Maul's skill with the blade also played a significant role in allowing him to outmaneuver and defeat Qui-Gon. By the time the Clone Wars had progressed, Obi-Wan was regarded as one of the best lightsaber duelists in the Jedi Order, being regarded as the master of Form 3 Surisu by Mace Windu himself. During the Clone Wars era, Maul faced off against Kenobi in blade-to-blade combat on multiple occasions, and he put up a good fight each time. In fact, he arguably outperformed Kenobi in Season 4, Episode 22 of the Clone Wars, when him and his brother Savage faced off against Kenobi and Asajj Ventress.
Obi-Wan.
After taking a couple of blows, Obi-Wan even remarked to Ventress that they were outmatched, and they ended up running from Maul and Savage. The last lightsaber duel I'm going to mention involving Maul is the face-off he had with Ahsoka Tano on Mandalore, right at the end of the Clone Wars. This may confuse some of you, as those who have watched the recently released Clone Wars Season 7 know Maul was ultimately defeated and captured by Ahsoka at the end of this encounter. However, I find it salient to give context to this fight. Maul was never truly trying to defeat or kill Ahsoka, but rather to turn her into an ally. As such, I am not dissuaded from referring to this duel as evidence of Maul's abilities. The portion of this duel I wish to focus on is the first few seconds of it. Watch the clip I'm providing here, taking notice of just how quickly Maul is able to disarm Ahsoka of one of her lightsabers. He manages to do this within the first 15 or so seconds of the duel. If he had kept going like this, it's not much of a stretch to suggest that Ahsoka wouldn't have survived for very long against Maul. Both Dooku and Maul are of a very high caliber in terms of their lightsaber dueling abilities, and given the differences in their specialties, with Maul sporting impressive abilities in terms of speed and strength, as opposed to Dooku being a master of finesse and accuracy, it would undoubtedly be an interesting encounter to witness. With that said, I did not have any difficulty picking a clear winner in this category. Given Makashi's inherent weakness against opponents who utilize effective strength and speed-based attacks, on the surface, it may seem readily apparent to some that Maul should be declared the winner. However, as I stated previously, I've seen enough examples of Dooku effectively defending himself against the magnificently powerful chops of Anakin Skywalker with mere one-handed blocks to believe that Dooku's extraordinary power in the Force enables him to largely offset these inherent weaknesses of the form via Force augmentation. Another reference point I look at here is how they've both fared against Obi-Wan Kenobi and Asajj Ventress. Maul has consistently contended with Kenobi, gaining the upper hand on some occasions but falling short on others, and he also appeared to have come out on top in his one confrontation with Ventress. However, Dooku has effectively mopped the floor with both Kenobi and Ventress both just about every time they've locked blades, almost as if they were children. As such, I find myself more impressed with Dooku's lightsaber dueling abilities, and as a result, I declare the Count the winner of this round.
You must connect with your hatred.
The next round's victory will be decided based upon Force abilities. First, we'll examine some of Count Dooku's Force feats. During the era of the Clone Wars, the Count displayed some very noteworthy feats as a Force wielder. One ability of his which stands out is his highly advanced abilities with telekinesis, which, in the context of the Star Wars universe, is defined as the ability to lift and move items using only the Force. Dooku was actually considered a foremost expert on telekinesis while still serving as a Jedi Master, and, presumably, the dark side only further enhanced his abilities with this power. Observe how effortlessly he appears to be utilizing his telekinetic powers in these clips from the Attack of the Clones movie against Grandmaster Yoda. Additionally, he displays an effective use of telekinesis in several of his encounters with Anakin Skywalker, casually pelting him with objects as distractions. In the second of those two clips I just showed you, Dooku is keeping those lamps levitating while simultaneously engaged in lightsaber combat with Anakin, and the second he backs off a bit, he is able to pelt Anakin with them. Next, I find Dooku's abilities with Force augmentation to be especially impressive. For example, despite being around 80 years old during the time of the Clone Wars, he is able to enhance his speed enough to dodge multiple attacks from Asajj Ventress after being disarmed by Savage Opress. Ventress is a very quick, agile opponent, and she is also utilizing two lightsabers at once here. But even though she's leveraging her natural speed here, she cannot manage to make contact with an unarmed Dooku a single time. His augmentation also allows him to jump upwards of 100 feet in the air, perform front and back flips with ease, and land completely unharmed after falling from distances in excess of 100 feet.
Not need my eyes to see you, Jedi.
One last point regarding Force augmentation. As I mentioned earlier, I believe that Dooku's ability to enhance his performance through the Force was advanced enough to significantly offset the inherent weaknesses of Form 2, Makashi, mainly being that against strength-based opponents, allowing him to utilize the form effectively while facing off even with the likes of Anakin Skywalker. A particular useful dark side ability as it pertains to combat is the ability to generate Force lightning, which is generated as tendrils of lightning bolts emitted from an individual's fingertips. Force lightning is viewed by some, such as Darth Sidious, as the purest expression of the dark side, malice made manifest, and it inflicts unimaginable pain upon its unfortunate victims, that is, if it doesn't outright kill them. This is not an easy ability to master, so to become adept with it is a sign of serious power and skill. In this scene, you'll see that Dooku's lightning was strong enough to force Anakin Skywalker into unconsciousness within the span of just a few seconds. He also used this ability to effectively subdue Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress, both of whom would instantly collapse from the intense pain Dooku's lightning would inflict upon them.
Get up! We must defeat him! Get up!
Dooku even shows the ability to effectively utilize telekinesis and Force lightning simultaneously, which is particularly impressive considering how much focus these abilities require. In addition to how he demonstrated this in the last clip I just showed you, watch as he ends his encounter with the 4 Night Sisters by simultaneously blasting all 4 of them with Force Lightning while levitating them and then throwing them out the windows of his living quarters, while drugged no less. Darth Maul does not display as much diversity in terms of Force abilities, though he still shows some definite competency as a Force wielder. For example, I find his now iconic hallway scene from Clone Wars Season 7 to be an impressive display of telekinesis.
Sir, the hyperdrive generators are failing. Disengage. Disengage! It's too late!
Maul has also displayed some impressive feats with Force augmentation, showing some significant acrobatic abilities during the events of the Phantom Menace movie and the Clone Wars series. In some instances, he's shown leaping just as high as Dooku. However, in my eyes, Maul's most impressive Force ability by far is his ability to use his raw connection with the dark side of the Force to stay alive while afflicted with what should be mortal wounds. Think about this. His entire body was cut in half at the waist. Next, he falls hundreds of feet down a shaft and summons just enough power to grab onto an air vent, and through a series of events eventually ends up on the junkyard world of Lotho Minor. I cannot, for the life of me, think of another character who has displayed this strong of a will to survive, and being Force sensitive, he's able to use this to connect with the dark side of the Force, which enables him to survive injuries which would surely kill virtually anybody else. Both Dooku and Maul have very powerful connections with the Force, and both of them are able to utilize the dark side's combative abilities very well. However, Dooku sports a more diverse set of Force abilities than Maul. Maul never uses Force Lightning, which, in my opinion, puts him at a fairly significant disadvantage in this realm. His competency with Force Lightning makes one especially dangerous in combat. If Maul were as powerful as Vader, who also doesn't use Force Lightning due to limitations of his suit, he'd be able to effectively compensate for this deficiency with other powers. However, this is not the case. Maul does not exhibit advanced enough abilities with any other Force powers to convince me that he would be able to keep up with the Count as a Force wielder. As such, I declare Count Dooku the winner of Round 2.
It's a great pity that our paths have never crossed before, Obi-Wan.
The final category I will be examining individually today is that of physicality/martial arts abilities. So let's get right into it. Dooku is a human male, and he is very tall, listed at 1.96 meters or slightly over 6 feet 4 inches. His height provides him with a long reach, which is an advantage in hand-to-hand combat. He is physically tough as well, possessing a relatively high tolerance to pain. However, given his advanced age, he does have less stamina than he had in years prior. Dooku's training in hand-to-hand combat began when he was a young Padawan in the Jedi Order. As such, being around 80 during the time period in which we're focusing on, he has roughly 3/4 of a century in martial arts experience, and he puts this training to good use. Despite the fact that Makashi focuses solely on blade-to-blade combat, Dooku customized his own fighting style to effectively integrate punches and kicks into his sequences, with him seeming to favor kicks over punches. Let's look at his encounter with Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress. Here, Ventress opens up with an aggressive attack, and Dooku, while defending against her and Savage Opress's lightsaber strikes, lands 2 good kicks on her very quickly, with both shots taking her off her feet. Ventress is a skilled martial artist herself, but Dooku knocks her around almost as if she were a child. Let's look at another example of an adept kick on his part, this time against Obi-Wan Kenobi on Obadiah, the Pike's homeworld. Did you see how far his kick sent Obi-Wan soaring? Then, after a few more seconds, he lands another kick, this time on Anakin. Neither Anakin nor Obi-Wan managed to land a single hit against the Count here. Speaking of kicks, here's another example of Dooku landing a hard one, this time on one of the invisible Night Sisters who ambushed him. Don't forget that he was drugged during this encounter. Darth Maul is a Zabrak male born in 52 BBY on the planet of Dathomir. On average, members of the Zabrak species are physically stronger, more athletic, and more durable than humans, and Maul is no exception to this rule. With a superb combination of strength, speed, and skill, he is a particularly formidable martial artist, which I suppose makes it fitting that he is played by martial artist Ray Park in the movies. From a young age, he was trained in the art of Terraskasi, a fighting style developed specifically to fight Force-Wielders. He is seen utilizing his fists, elbows, knees, and feet during his brawls. I believe it's relevant here to mention that during the time of the Clone Wars, Maul actually has prosthetic legs made out of metal alloys, which means that his kicks and knees are likely much more painful than they would be if they were performed by somebody with their original flesh and bone legs. Listen to the way they clang when he lands a kick on Obi-Wan. Ouch, that must have really hurt. Here's another kick he landed which sent somebody flying. This occurred on Mandalore as Maul was challenging Pre Vizsla for the throne. Being a member of the Zabrak species, Maul has another unique physical advantage, the horns atop his head. These horns make potential headbutts dramatically more dangerous than they would be otherwise. Here's a clip of Maul's brother, Savage Opress, using his horns to impale Adi Gallia, a trained Jedi Knight. Though I can't think of any examples of Maul doing this in the current canon continuity, it would certainly be another option available in his combat arsenal. Additionally, Maul has an incredible pain tolerance, often only growing more enraged and determined after taking hits from opponents such as Pre Vizsla or Obi-Wan Kenobi. Both Maul and Dooku have shown that they can dole out some pretty serious punishment with their striking abilities. By virtue of Dooku's age, he has many years of experience over Maul. However, this is a double-edged sword, as unlike Maul, who was decades younger and was trained from a young age to fight competently without having to rely on his use of the Force, Dooku's age makes it very necessary for him to augment his physicality. Without significant Force augmentation, he's essentially just a brittle old man. As such, if his concentration were to break for a moment, he could potentially cut off his augmentation, which would provide Maul with ample opportunity to launch an effective attack against him. In terms of pure skill in unarmed combat, I'm having a somewhat difficult time discerning who's superior. As such, in making my determination for this round, I'm relying heavily on comparisons of their physicality. Both Maul's species and less advanced age put him at a physical advantage over Dooku in terms of strength, fitness, and agility. Additionally, Maul's prosthetic legs are far harder than Dooku's flesh ones, meaning his kicks and knees would hurt much more by default, and his horns make the top of his head into another weapon with potentially lethal implications. As such, I'm awarding round 3 martial arts / physicality to Darth Maul. Now, let's set up this fight taking factors from all 3 rounds into account. Here's how I see things going down. Maul, being extremely aggressive and anger-driven, would be the first to attack, perhaps fueled by the awareness of Dooku being his replacement at Sidious's side. He immediately launches into very quick and strong Juyo-based lightsaber sequences, forcing Dooku to focus very intently on defending himself. The sheer kinetic energy and speed of Maul's attack momentarily shifts the momentum of the fight to Maul's advantage, bringing Dooku somewhat close to becoming unbalanced. However, the more Dooku draws upon the dark side to augment his physicality, the more effectively he's able to parry Maul's onslaught, and soon enough, he's moving quickly enough to start fighting in a more balanced manner, able to focus about equally on offensive and defensive moves. Maul would be surprised that a man of such advanced age would be starting to keep up with him, and this surprise would soon turn into frustration. Dooku's skills with the lightsaber would begin to reveal themselves, and, realizing that his chances of outfencing the Count aren't exactly in his favor, I believe Maul would begin incorporating some martial arts strikes into his attacks, perhaps attempting to take advantage of the benefits his prosthetic legs and horns confer upon him. He might be able to land a decent shot on the Count, but I think Dooku would manage to move out of the way quickly enough to avoid taking the full brunt of a kick. However, the glancing blow would still be painful due to the hardness of Maul's prosthetic foot, and the Count's next move would be to put a bit of distance between the two of them. Performing a backflip and landing about 25 or 30 feet away from Maul, he would begin using his abilities with telekinesis to begin pelting Maul with whatever miscellaneous objects might be scattered among them. Maul would become momentarily distracted with deflecting and dodging these objects, and as his focus shifts to those objects for just the slightest moment, the Count immediately takes advantage of this opening by sending malignant bolts of force lightning right at him, bolts which would meet their target. Given that his lightning is intense enough to immediately disable most opponents he's faced off with, he'd be surprised to see that Maul isn't going down right away. Keep in mind that Maul's sheer toughness and will to survive enabled him to cling to life after having his body cut in half. Somehow, Maul digs deep and finds the wherewithal to raise his lightsaber a few inches and deflect Dooku's lightning. Though still alive, Maul would be disoriented and would be suffering from bad burns on the surface of his body. As such, he would be able to close the distance between them and attack with some more lightsaber sequences, attempting to use his pain to feed his anger, which would in turn feed his powers. However, the force lightning would have taken a toll on him, and he'd find that his ability to focus is diminished. It would only be so long before he'd slip up, and the Count would recognize even the smallest flaw in Maul's defense. Finding the chink in the armor, Dooku uses one of his inhumanly precise attacks to sever one of Maul's hands. Maul is racked with pain again, but will continue to fight with one hand, though the agony would further break his concentration, and a few seconds later, Dooku senses another opening and severs his other hand. The pain from the lightning merges with the pain of losing both hands, and Maul involuntarily falls to his knees. Dooku, knowing how strong Maul's will to survive is, and wanting to take no chances, immediately decapitates him the moment his knees hit the ground, and his body slumps over a second later. Thus, I declare Darth Tyranus, aka Count Dooku, the winner of this duel. Thank you so much to all of you who decided to watch this video of mine, whether you watched just a portion of it or watched it in its entirety. This is the first and what I hope I can turn into a versus series, and I had a lot of fun writing it, even though it took me more time to complete than my other videos. If you enjoy my Star Wars based videos, please feel free to subscribe as I'm trying to grow my channel. Have a great day, everyone.